Welcome to the Virtual Networking Checklist webinar. As the pandemic altered the way everyone was working, and probably will impact it for the next couple of years, job developers are quickly learning how to adapt and up our game in the virtual world. And we wanted to share with you our top 10 list of ways to ensure that your virtual networking maximizes your reach to businesses so that when they're ready to hire, you'll be the first one they call to source candidates. Don't forget to download the list from our website. We're going to go through this in rapid fashion, so pause this replay anytime you need to take notes to help ensure you understand how to use each item listed. I'm Deb Russell, and I want to introduce my partner, Cindy O'Bannon. I live in Massachusetts, and she lives in Washington State. She and I met virtually 7 years ago working on an employer-driven disability hiring project, and we finally met in person about a year later. When I say employer-driven, I mean that the employer was in charge of what and why things happened on that project. We didn't represent people with disabilities. We weren't paid by the state or anyone like that. We were paid by the owners of the company, and our jobs were to help them to learn how to employ people with disabilities. I was working on the project remotely, providing strategy, advice, and support, since I had just spent 7 years at Walgreens creating their disability-inclusive hiring success. And Cindy was the person embedded at the company and constantly traveled to all of their work sites to facilitate their hiring in different locations. For the past 7 years, we've worked on this project, and along the way, the company has asked us to try disability inclusion in different facets of their very diverse portfolio of companies. Through this project, and while helping other companies, we often noticed that the barriers to hiring people with disabilities were not the candidates with disabilities, but the barriers we noticed were the job developers, the agencies, and generally the system that were creating barriers these hiring managers experienced. So finally, about 9 months ago, we created an online course to help job developers, their supervisors, voc rehab counselors, and honestly anyone else who wanted to help people with disabilities get jobs, but were inadvertently getting in the way and therefore finding it challenging to convince companies to hire their clients. The course is called Modern Job Development, and I'll talk about it and other resources, some of which are free like this webinar, at the very end. This webinar includes some of the content from Modern Job Development, as we found that many job developers needed help pivoting their approach to networking with businesses into a virtual format. And these are our top 10 tips for networking during a pandemic. As with everything we do, we need to start by defining our goals and timeline. If you have no idea where you want to go, it's difficult to get there. Your goals can be big or small, but you should try to think about specific areas where you want to make progress. For instance, are you trying to gain new contacts or revitalize older ones, like maybe some leads that went cold? Or perhaps you want to strengthen existing relationships. Can you think of a goal related to improving your networking in the next couple of weeks? Are you trying to connect with more manufacturers? Or maybe you've noticed that cleaning and sanitation have a huge need and will only mushroom as more businesses restart. Or maybe it's delivery. Pause the video now and write down your goals to increase your network. Okay, are you done? Great. Now that you have your goals, you're going to want to set a timeline. Right now, everything seems like it's hurry up and wait with all of this uncertainty. So timelines can feel challenging, but it doesn't mean you can't set goals like, by the end of the next month, I'm going to research and reach out to 50 different manufacturers within a 40-mile radius and collect all the information I can. Then I'm going to research to see who I know that knows them and ensure that I connect with them via LinkedIn. We actually will talk about LinkedIn in just a couple minutes. Okay, so you know your goals and timelines. So now you can plan a strategy. How do you want to accomplish the goals? Don't forget both passive and active methods. And remember, one example of a passive strategy is just simply to post on social media. If you're unsure about strategy, you can use one of the methods that we discuss in our course, which is to reverse engineer it all. Start with what success will look like, and then break it down in reverse. If you want to have 20 new contacts in hospitality by the end of the month, How many will you have to have by the 14th? And how will you get them? Will you batch your work or do it all in one day? Start to put all the pieces of the strategy together, which we'll drill into next. But keep in mind that each piece is intentional and designed to complement the others to help you achieve the full picture of great networking, full of leads and various stages of prospecting. For instance, I know that I'm interested in connecting with more post-secondary schools right now and recruiters for distribution centers. We really encourage our students to be intentional about their networking and cover dozens of ways to access more businesses. You might be asking, but how? And we're going to cover that next. Once you have your goals, timeline, and strategy, it's time to get into details. After you make those contacts, how will you maintain and grow the relationship? How will you follow up? How often? And using which mechanisms? What's your primary and secondary purpose with each step in your nurture sequence? Are you unsure of what a nurture sequence is? Well, it's a communication plan that allows you to help build the know, like, and trust factor that we need in relationships. After you make first contact, you want to remind them who you are and that you're valuable and offer something valuable, like awesome employees. The pause that was created by this pandemic is an ideal time to create nurture sequences. And it's a key technique in modern job development to effectively build these relationships. This is what a nurture sequence can look like for emails. I snagged this graphic from a Google search. It's designed for real estate, but nurturing's really nurturing, no matter your industry. Your nurture sequence can include snail mail, dropping off packets, video chats, emails, and more. Right now, we're a little restricted on some of those, but you can create the sequence and start using the virtual aspects now and evolve into closer contact methods when it's safe to do so. Okay, now let's talk social media as a virtual networking tool, because it has its pluses and its minuses, and everyone has varying opinions about its place in business. But you just need to be mindful of how to use it. For instance, we have a job developers private Facebook discussion group, and it's incredibly popular and growing each week. When networking via social media, you want to be transparent about why you're connecting with people. When you request a connection, be specific about why you want to connect and what you can offer. So, Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram were originally conceptualized for personal usage. But quickly, their executives realized the monetary opportunities to position them as business tools as well. However, LinkedIn remains the grand poobah of them all. And if you're not active on LinkedIn, get on it as soon as possible. We're actually hosting a series of free workshops in July to help everyone improve their usage on LinkedIn. We know it can feel intimidating to some, and we want to be sure to use it within the guidance of your employer. But it's probably your number one tool for networking right now. So if you need help with it, whether it's to refine what you've got or to start dipping your toes in, be sure to contact us about the workshops. Your social media strategy should continue to build the know, like, and trust factor by offering high-value content that frames your value proposition. It should also be used to access people that you cannot get through any other prospecting tool. Remember, LinkedIn is your greatest social media tool, and if you don't have at least 1,000 connections, you haven't even come close to what you can access. And if you live or work in a large metropolitan area, your goal should be at least 10,000 connections. Our July workshops will include a challenge to increase connections exponentially. Because you want to be intentional with your networking and relationship development efforts, you also need support. Unless you happen to have your own private assistant, you'll want to use technology to give you graphic design capabilities, a mechanism to track all of the contacts you're making, with a plan for your next steps, also known as customer relations management. You'll need a solid email platform like MailChimp, Constant Contact, or ConvertKit, and video conferencing like Zoom or Skype. At a minimum, you want a web page on your agency's site, but we believe that it's much more effective for you to have your own separate digital identity. If nothing else, a LinkedIn company page can help, and that will be included in the workshops this summer. Now, with all of those supports, you also need digital tools to support your networking efforts. And for this, we use Canva. Canva is our own personal digital graphics design firm. There may be other resources like Canva, but we've never needed to research them. With Canva, you can create an e-business card, an awesome email signature, and in addition, you can use it to format very professional avatars or profile pics. LinkedIn has some great resources for suggesting how to have that picture taken. Definitely no selfies. These kinds of details of professionalism really matter. Next, we advise all of our students to have fabulous content to provide value to your prospects across all of your networking tactics, as well as to demonstrate your expertise and services. The students of Modern Job Development go through an entire toolbox that provides them with plenty of material to use. Things like scripts for your first cold call and follow-up calls, one-pagers explaining what you do and why it's awesome, a killer social profile and pocket stories, which are like elevator pitches for success stories. You'll need introductions and the script to create introduction requests, thank you notes, and finally, it's helpful to have a script for connection requests for LinkedIn. In fact, last month, some webinar attendees connected with us and showed us some killer introductions. They've set the bar pretty high, and we look forward to seeing what you can do. So be sure to connect with us on LinkedIn and hop over to our Facebook group where some members have been sharing these scripts. Now let's chat about video for a minute, because this has always been my big hang-up. I've always had huge issues about being on video, and so I never did it. I mean, I could speak in front of thousands in an arena, but video seems intimidating. And then in April, I was forced to jump in. I hosted my first Facebook Live and had to take myself through a crash course in how to do it. It actually went rather well, and now I hop onto Zoom meetings with no hesitancy whatsoever. For video, you want to take into consideration things like lighting, and how people will not just see you and your background, but hear you. And of course, you want to be able to hear clearly as well, and hope that the rest of the group can't hear your kids, dog, or spouse in addition to hearing you. The next thing that will be sure to up your networking game is to be ready with resources, information, and connections to serve your prospects and demonstrate the value of a relationship with you. Businesses need good employees. You have a bushel of great candidates. Make sure that employers know who and what you are, and how to get a hold of you, and then offer a lot of value that isn't just candidates, but stuff like information, tools, resources, and connections. Be dynamic and not just a one-trick pony. Businesses appreciate that you have something to give in addition to just candidates. The final thing to consider on your checklist of virtual networking is your listening skills. When networking and nurturing, you want to stay curious, ask more questions, get clarity, and be sure that you're listening more than you're talking. So this webinar is not a great example of that, but then again, offering a webinar isn't a strong relationship building mechanism. It's just an introduction or prospecting tool. When you're networking with others, asking questions and listening is much more important than talking. When you hop on a virtual coffee date, set a timer and see if you can aim for 2/3 of the time to be the other person talking, with your engagement being staying curious and gaining clarity. Okay, that's our top 10 tips for virtual networking. If you want more information about Modern Job Development or our mini course, Tactics to Find Companies That Want to Hire People with Disabilities, check out our school on Thinkific. Take a screenshot of this address and then type it into your browser. Or go to my website, www.debrussellinc.com. Thanks for taking the time to learn more about virtual networking as a job development tool. Stay tuned for information about the July LinkedIn workshops. And if you need that information again, to go to our Thinkific school, the address is https://deborah-russell.twitter.com/.
THINKIFIC.com/COLLECTIONS.
We'll see you soon.